What's happening, guys? Welcome to Bob. I'm your host, William, and joined with me, as always, or usually as always, my brother, Micah. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, we're closing out the final part of Waco, part 3 here. We're going to tie it up, and we give basically some of the court cases and some major issue. Well, 3 major things that come up for me with the ATF, the FBI, with the court cases, and how I believe they, in my personal opinion, as we discussed in great detail at the end in our closing thoughts, covering up information or at least what's the word, Micah, when you're interfering,
tampering,
with tampering with the evidence in an ongoing investigation. But as you will see as we get into this episode, real quick though, we'd like to give a shout out. If you guys have not checked them out, I would highly recommend them. I have listened to every single episode they put out so far. They are called What If Tomorrow Podcast. So it's What If Tomorrow Podcast, and it's ran by Phil and Mark. I actually know Phil from the UFO Garage podcast. So it's kind of cool how we're like, you meet in these communities and then people are starting their own podcast, and I love it, man. It's really cool to be a part of both of these groups now and see how they're, putting out content that I personally enjoy and consume and love. But they particularly focus on like, it's the what if question. So what if the volcano went off tomorrow over in Yellowstone? Or what if a nuclear bomb hit? Or what if there's a civil war? Just the what ifs. And they get really detailed on it, man. And they break it down. They talk about just your basic survival, your 72-hour pack and things of that nature. And I'll tell you, from listening to the very first episode, I realized how screwed I was. I was like, well, holy crap, I'm dead if something happens right now. Because you just don't think about these things, right, Mike? I know maybe you're a little more prepared than I am, or maybe than the average person, but most people are not thinking about, we're too comfortable with what's going on around us, and we're just not thinking about the ramifications of everything shutting down around us and what that truly leads into. So anyways, you guys should give them a check. Check them out. You can get it through Facebook. You can get it through Spotify. I know for a fact. I think they're also on iHeartRadio. I checked them out there. They have a couple of different other platforms that they're getting on. But I know for a fact, Spotify and iHeartRadio, you can find them on there. And it, once again, is What If Tomorrow Podcast. And you can find them on their Facebook group as well. And you can find Bob for about 2-3 more weeks on Facebook, before we're completely banned. As I mentioned in my last episode on another rant, we're moving to some other stuff, and we have some exciting information we'll get into as this episode begins here, some upcoming stuff we have for us, and but you can show support that way. Mike, I did say our email wrong. Is it bandofbeardedbrothersusa, or is it bandofbeardedbros?
US.
So what is our email?
It's bandofbeardedbrothersus@gmail.com.
Feel free. Message us. I will check that email at least once a week just to see if there's anything coming in. You want to share a story, you want us to cover something, let us know. Feel free to reach out to me on Facebook through Messenger. Excuse me, I almost burped there. People are going to still think I'm smoking weed, as you'll hear about as we get going in that episode. Anyways, you can feel free to reach out to me that way and suggest an episode or an idea, and we'll get into that. And you can also follow us on Twitter. You can follow us on Instagram. And now I've made the move to Gab, G-A-B, baby, where freedom of support, or wait, let's back up here. Freedom of speech is supported. Freedom of support. Freedom of speech is supported. And I'm a big fan of freedom of speech. And that is my 2 cents on it. Micah, you want to add anything? Because I've been talking the whole intro. So
That's usually how it goes. So no.
Oh my gosh. No, you need to say something. Add something, please.
I have said something. Something.
You're
welcome,
mother trucker. Okay, roll the music. Let's go. Finish this up. Part 3. Let's go, baby. My name is William, I'm your host, and I'm joined with my brother Micah as always. Well, almost always, isn't that right, Micah?
That's right.
Last night I went a little off the rails. I was a
I
But
think it's your first completely solo post,
No, I
isn't
had
it?
a
I think you've had some solo ones, but you had a guest that you were talking to.
no. I did a solo
You did?
one. Yeah, episode 10 or 11.
Huh.
Episode 10 or 11. It was the year the UFOs invaded
Guess I need to
Michigan.
keep up with our own podcast a little bit better here.
Yeah, I did a complete hour-long episode on the year UFOs invaded Michigan. It was in 1966. It was when they basically coined the phrase swamp gas. And I went into that story there. I did do that one by myself, and it is very different. Last night was a little more relaxing because, first of all, it wasn't planned. And for those of you who've listened to the episode, you would know I was literally start the episode going, "All right, testing audio, 1, 2." It was not planned to
So
go into a
you
rant.
edited this sucker well too, didn't you?
Oh yeah, did everything myself. Do it. Yeah, now that is fair. This one is my complete me doing it on my own part, because normally I do stuff and then I send it to you. I'm like, well, it's ready. Here, you do the rest of the work. But anyways, we are on this particular episode, as we mentioned in the intro there, to tie up the end of Waco, which, man, is it taking us some time to get through this. We've been talking about Waco. I feel like we've been talking about Waco for months. We've only done 2
we've
episodes
been
on it.
really bad. Yeah, we've gone a couple weeks without posting anything until last
Yeah.
night, apparently.
Yes, last night I made it happen.
So I do apologize about that. I am just as much, if not more, to blame than William is here. William's definitely hyped up for what we've got in the future.
Yes, I am.
So we've got some cool things coming, provided we can get them done.
Yeah, no, I actually just I talked to Ben today, and if anybody's looking for a website, logo design, anything of that nature, he's been super patient with me. As Micah can relate to me being picky or I don't want to say anal, but what's the word, Micah? What is the word I'm looking for here? I care about detail too much that probably other people aren't gonna freaking notice. It's weird.
I
Only
don't
when it comes
know.
to
I think-
designing stuff. Because if I'm doing something else, I don't know, just I don't know.
I would
just
say
every door.
particular would be
yeah.
a fair word for you when it comes to that. But I haven't actually seen any of the conversations, so I don't know how particular you've been.
Yeah, no, he's revised our logo literally 7 times. He's been
So
extremely patient.
he's earning that dough.
Yeah,
right
no,
there.
for real. No, he said he has reiterated several times that, listen, I want this to be a logo that you guys love and all that stuff.
Reiterated.
Iterated?
Yeah,
Wait, is it
reiterated.
iterated? Yeah. So he has told me many times that he wants it to be something that we'll love and be a fan of. So yeah, I guess we can briefly hit on that really quick, guys, and we'll put up a timestamp of when, if you just want to jump to when we jump into the episode. But yeah, probably October 1st
He's just
here.
volunteering all this editing stuff, man.
Yeah,
He's
I
just
know.
like, oh, we'll just add a timestamp. I mean,
hard.
yeah, you're right,
Mother
but still,
trucker.
at the same time,
You look
you
at
go
it,
ahead,
you
you
see
add
it.
the timestamp, mother trucker.
I will in the book. I actually downloaded it finally so I could do the stuff last night too. But anyways, October 1st, guys, we got some exciting news coming that way.
At least that's what we're shooting for. We're shooting for October 1st.
Well, as I say, I talked to Ben today. He laid out kind of a blueprint of what our website's going to look like. It looked good to me. I mean, as far as just no designs, anything yet, just basically what it'll kind of consist of. And it was what you and I had discussed. So he's going to have that up hopefully in the next maybe 2 weeks or so. And then we'll have it fine-tuned and refined and ready to rock and roll by October 1st would be my goal, because as many know, and I'd love to maybe you and I will run an episode about this. Have you seen the update that Facebook's bringing October 1st here?
I did not.
Oh, get ready. If you have not gotten the notification for it, that is another time, another episode. I've got a ton of screenshots, read through the whole thing, but basically it's just going to flat out ban, remove anything that it does not agree with or that it has an issue with at all. If it deems it fake news, false information, going against the narrative, it's just completely shutting people down. So I made the switch over last night actually to something called Gab, and there's several of these platforms that are huge proprietors. Wait, is that the right term?
Sure.
Sure. They're huge fans
Proprietors of free speech.
Free speech. I thought it was, but I was like, wait a second. Huge free speech. And that's all we really want. We just want a fair shake. And again, go listen to my rant if you want. I went on a rant about it and the importance of it. So, but we're going to have merchandise. We have all kinds of logo designs coming up. And we'll probably do a full little mini episode or a live episode for you guys just to kind of really go into this.
Yeah,
and
no,
then
I'm not sure quite how long it takes, because we're probably going to end up going through Teespring for the merch. I'm not quite sure how long their process is. So once we actually get we are getting a new logo, as Williams already mentioned. So once we actually get that finalized, we can get that sent over to them. But I'm not sure how long their process is. So it may not launch at the same time.
Yeah, our personal website will be available October 1st. Is for sure, but would be the goal. And we're gonna put some links to that how you may support the show, but just separate area where we can have some conversations freely and not be limited by, in my opinion,
overlords,
fascist, communistic, overlord. I guess douchebags. Yeah. Limiting things that were even like we got flagged over one. It was a meme, and it said if the picture, it was like the ball, like the center, and it's like red and it was purple and yellow, and it was like if it looks like it's moving to you, then you're stressed. If it's not moving, then you're not. And it like flagged. It was like, this is false information. This picture cannot tell you if you're stressed or not. It's like, dude, settle down. Holy crap. How far is that wedgie up your rear end right now, bro? Like, jeez, it's just a joke. It's a joke, man. Anyways, so exciting stuff in the works, and we got some really cool rewards that we're gonna get hooked up for those that want to be able to be a part of this, the Bob team and family, really, and support us and going forward and continuing to bring forth not only stories like we're gonna finish up a tie up today, which is just kind of history related. I think a lot of people actually knew about Waco, but maybe didn't know some of the details. And we're going to hit one particular detail that really bothers me about all of the Waco stuff. But then also the other cool stories that are going on, and just the idea of freedom of speech. Freedom of speech, baby. I don't understand. I don't know that we ever thought, at least I wasn't thinking that in my day and age, that we would have to fight so hard for freedom of speech. You would have thought, the early 2000s, when the internet was really hitting the scene, the big thing about it was the freedom of speech. As far as like there was all this freedom, anybody could post anything, anybody could put things up, and blah 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 blah. And now we've gone to this like corporate operation on what we can and cannot do to an extreme manner. Once again, as my point was in the rant I did last night, which is every law that gets put into place almost every single time hurts the law-abiding citizens more than it does the actual criminal that they are seeking to punish. That's just my opinion. True. And I believe there's evidence to back that. But, Micah, I've done enough rant and raving about this. What are we dealing? What's our timestamp here? I don't know if we took time. We're going to have to go back.
Oh, it's pretty long. We're going to be at like probably? 10 minutes.
All right.
Don't quote me on that. It might not be 10 minutes.
Okay, so if you guys have skipped ahead here, we're finally getting into the Waco stuff. We just covered some cool things we're excited about. Mikey, you got anything you want to add, though, before I say we're getting into the Waco stuff? Or are you ready to jump on in?
No, although we did... It's a small milestone, but we hit a milestone last night. I think we were at 15,000.
15,000.
No, we are downloads. At all time we are at 1,519 downloads, and I believe that was sometime in December. Yeah, December of 2019. So we've not quite got a year under our belt, and it doesn't seem like a lot, but for two dudes,
I don't know, man.
Who
God bless them. But
you and I, we got 1,500 people listening. Well, not 1,500 people, but 1,500 listens.
Yeah, they've at least pressed play once.
Yeah, we're doing. I'm satisfied with that. To be honest, I really when you came to me with like, let's do the podcast, I was like, yeah, this mother trucker's crazy. She's gonna blow a whole bunch of money out his butthole. We're gonna have like 3 people listen to it the entire time. It's gonna be fantastic. And we've actually done a lot better than I expected, so I appreciate it. And I look forward to getting that number up a little bit.
And we had a great community going on before Facebook got involved and shadow banned our page.
But we're not here to rant about that.
We're not.
Because
we're not.
Everyone can piss about something.
We can,
but we'll have our own website.
Right, we're finding a way.
We don't have to worry about all that crap.
That's right. I will say, though, you ever notice, I don't know how much you listen to podcasts, but every once in a while I'll be checking out a new podcast, and I always kind of check out the first couple episodes just to see what it was like versus where they're at now. And they'll be like on their 5th episode, and I'm like, man, we're at like 4,000 downloads already, bro. And I'm like, the French toast are you doing? Like 4,000? How in the world?
I mean, I'm sure they've got some sort of advertisement that they got going on. We got 1,500 downloads. All we had was our Facebook group, really.
That is true.
I mean, so
we have never really
not
paid
that bad.
anybody or any other, and there are
we haven't really done
any.
That. Yeah, and I'm sure, like if we actually can get a little bit out of, say, the merch or something, we can put that right back into advertising, maybe grow our audience a little bit more.
And
so
we'll show that
see
with
how
the
it
Patreon
goes.
stuff too. It won't be through Patreon, but we'll call it Patreon, or you contributing, or you donating. We'll show you where your money's going. And like Mike is saying, in the first little bit, yes, we'd love to be able to cover our monthly costs, which is not a lot, but it would help. I mean, we're probably under $60 a month, somewhere in there, for total of everything we're doing and all of it together. But if we could cover that, and anything left over, we would put up what your money would be going towards. Maybe some slightly better cameras so our mouth keeps up. Some stuff like that. Like, the picture's never bad, but I always feel like when you're watching it back, it's like the old
maybe
Asian
we could buy some software for that way we don't have to use Skype.
Yeah.
That would be fantastic, actually.
That's true.
Because I really hate using Skype, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
But it works, and it's free, so
That's true.
it works.
Again, we're thank you for each and every one of you that have gotten it this far.
Yeah,
into
we're way far into this episode.
Well, I mean, this far, getting to
probably
1,500 downloads. And some people might be making fun of us. Man, you're on it. You know what? It is what it is, man. I think anything that happens overnight and has no building and work in it, good for you.
Could
but
crumble
sometimes
overnight too.
That's the thing. So I hit on some of that in that little rant I did last night. I said, man, my heart and soul's in this, and I really believe in Bob. And I really think we have a chance to be, not something special, but we could change the world. I'm just kidding. We probably couldn't change the world, but we'll bring some interesting stories to you, and we'll share them in a fun and interactive manner. And I really want to start bringing on some guests too, to bring in like a third kind of point of view with a couple things when we can. But anyways, now, is this for real? Are we going to for real?
We're for real. We're going to throw the timestamp right now.
All right.
Yeah.
If you're joining us now, we're for reals this time. If you didn't listen to all that crap we just talked about, going to dig into Waco here and put a little, I almost said pretty bow, but this isn't a pretty incident. And if you've listened to the first 2 episodes, obviously you probably wouldn't have just jumped to this one. On this terrible atrocity on both sides, all around, mishandling of the Waco incident. But there's a couple things that we want to bring to your guys' attention that we feel I personally feel, based on the evidence, not just my emotions, based on the evidence, I feel brings about some pretty strong questions for me. But Mike, I'll let you take the lead here on what you want to kind of jump into. I think last we had left off with the actual amount of people that had passed away. And the basically the last day, the siege that actually took place on Waco, and how that went down, and the amount of lives that were lost that way. So after that all takes place, we kind of jump into what I guess you could call the aftermath of everything. Which looks like I'm kind of looking back over some of our old notes too, and the fire begins to burn out. The entire compound is okay. Yeah. So law enforcement sources state that David Koresh is dead. So I kind of wonder how long. Because remember when they say they held up the fire department for like 15 minutes or something like that because they were nervous?
I think it was longer than that.
Was it 15 or 20? Somewhere in there.
No, they showed up.
Right here.
Not long after the fire started, I believe.
Yeah.
And they were held back because, there was a chance that
gunfire,
people were going to get shot.
Yeah. Which, it does make sense. It doesn't look good knowing what we know now, but I could see in the moment where maybe it made sense. Excuse me, but it's...
Actually, I was wrong. They arrived at 12:22. They were not allowed to pass until 12:37.
Yeah, so it was
like
15
15 minutes.
15 minutes, somewhere in there, yeah. which is a significantly long time when you have a
Especially when
raging
you have a
fire.
roaring fire. It can take down a lot in 15 minutes.
It sounds bad, but it almost feels like in that moment they were just like, all right, we're just going to let that place burn down, and then you guys can, like, nothing else is going to catch fire around here, so we're not even going to send you out there to deal with it. I mean, it sounds bad, but I almost feel like that's kind of what they did, and then we're like, well, we had to protect them in case they were shot at. Anyways, Micah, where do we even jump into as far as the aftermath?
I guess you could start off the aftermath of the ATF director ended up getting replaced by John McGall, I believe is how you pronounce his name, who criticized the ATF for basically the way they handled the raid.
So he also immediately came in and was like, wow.
Yeah, he criticized several aspects of the raid. And then there was a book called Blue Book.
About the aliens. I'm just, sorry.
I'm going to punch you in the face. That he actually made required reading for new agents. It basically a whole bunch of things changed. Obviously, we were on the wakes of Ruby Ridge.
Excuse me.
And then this happened.
Yeah.
So it was just one of those. It was like another push to be like, hey, we got to change something. We got to have, we got to change the way we deal with raids and that kind of stuff. So basically, they ended up changing the way that they treat it and the way that they train people, so that they would no longer do basically what they did, where they planned out an assault without exhausting, knocking and being like, hey, we need to take David Koresh in. Instead of doing that, which they never did, they would have to do that in the future before they would be able to plan out a raid.
And I could be wrong. I'm going to interject here just something that I remember off the top of my head from a while ago when we were researching all this. I thought that one of the David Thibodeau, I think it's Thibodeau, that survived, talked about their own rule book. Now, I don't know if this is the blue book you're talking about that maybe got officially drawn up afterwards, but I thought he said there was an original book that had anyways, that was like their course of action when in a situation like this when they're having a siege. And he said something along the lines of there was like, I want to say 21 or 22 different steps, right, that they had to take before they could go to directly shooting. And just basically course of action. And he said something like they broke 17 of their own 22 rules in the negotiation process and all that. I don't think there's anything we even have in our notes or writing here. This is just something I'm drawing from off the top of my head. I could be wrong on that.
The Blue Book is a report of the Department of Treasury on the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms investigation of Vernon Wayne Howe, also known as David Koresh.
Yeah, I'm almost positive David Thibodeau said this was a book that was already in I should say book. This was the rules of engagement
I don't think
that were already in place, that they broke 17 of their own 22 rules. In the whole process, from how they were negotiating to the terror, to basically when they were torturing them with the torture tactics with the oh man, what do you want to call it?
The noise and that kind of stuff. They were nonstop playing.
Words failing me right now, but yeah, through that, flashing the lights at them. Those are torture tactics. That is not a great way to It's not a great way to
It's not.
I suppose they think they're wearing them down.
De-escalation,
but when you bring in the religious aspect of it, where these people think that these guys have come and this is what they've heard preached, and taught to them all their life, and oh my goodness, we're in the moment. This is, the God said this was going to happen. He's using David. He's the Lamb of God. He told us this was going to happen, and now here we are. I mean, I don't think at the time that maybe the director of the ATF realized that he was reinforcing their belief system, but he really was in some ways. He absolutely drove them in a manner that they were willing and did die for David Koresh and his belief system that he sold to them in a sense, I guess. But
I mean, even after all of this, at least certain individuals, even after serving prison sentences, still have the same faith. They still believe, So
interesting.
After that, this is a point that I'm sure William's going to want to hit on. Was that the entire compound was bulldozed? Granted, I mean, it was ashes, right? Everything was pretty much ashes, but everything was bulldozed only 2 weeks after the incident.
Can you say that again, Micah? How long was that? With just
2 weeks.
2 weeks, 14 days. The largest mass, I'm going to use the word slaughter. I don't know that it intended to be, but it turned into the mass slaughter of American citizens on U.S. soil by other American citizens. And you bulldoze the entire, everything, all the evidence. In 14 days? And like you said, this is the point I want to make. This is where, even if nothing went wrong, maybe you did everything right by the book, by you doing that one thing, you take everything and you just throw it out the door because everybody's going to go, what the French toast? 14 days?
14
Forensics
days
didn't get to come
really,
in?
Yeah, it's not really
And then this is
time.
where you had the cases where people were saying that there weren't explosives on the site. And then, things got bulldozed. You could not go in and research and can prove or disprove what some individuals, whether it be the Branch Davidians or whether it be somebody, even the agents, who had said that they had seen these things. You couldn't do it because, there's nothing left to evaluate. It's just bulldozed and gone in a dumpster now. It's just mind-boggling to me. That one thing alone right there, and I don't know if we're going to hit on, I don't know what your plan is, because I know you kind of took lead on this particular part here, or episode for us, but where we're getting into the, where they had put in, when they brought in basically the audio files for the court cases, and you bring in all that evidence, too, of whether they were saying that they had wire devices hidden in the walls and stuff, but then it's like the Branch Davidians from David
I don't know that they
knew.
said it was hidden in the walls, but yeah, they had, as we already previously covered, they had hidden it in some of the milk and different foods that they brought to them. But yeah, that they had kind of went over that and said like, hey, we knew they were there, we put them all in one area. But yeah, there were recordings that at least allegedly came from the compound by Branch Davidians. And now, I don't know that I necessarily believe that those are entirely accurate, but who knows, maybe, I can't remember who said, I mean, it might have been Thibodeau that said that they had found them and they had put them all in the same spot, but maybe they're mistaken. Maybe they didn't find all of them. Maybe maybe he just saw a couple of them and there were more and they are actual recordings. I don't know.
Well, and we'll get into some of that. But let's deal with the, if you're okay with it, I know it's something you probably want to head on, those that did survive and how they were prosecuted, I guess, because there were some survivors.
Yeah, there's 12...
excuse me.
12 surviving Branch Davidian members after, obviously the children and stuff that had gotten out. I believe there was, 28, if I remember correctly?
A total
28 children
over the
that
time
had left.
that have been 20, yeah, somewhere in there, 26, 28,
20
something like
something.
And we're talking about those that had been
specifically.
negotiated to be released, not those that escaped the day of the siege, just those that have been released.
No,
leading up to that
12
siege.
individuals survived that the last day. It says 10 of them were charged, and most of those charges included conspiring to, aiding, and abetting in the murder of federal officers, and then the possession of various firearms, including automatic firearms. Now, I don't know that they actually ever found... Now, they did charge them with, but I don't know that they actually ever found any automatic firearms.
I know that they went to a grand jury, right? It was the 12.
They did end up going to a grand jury, yes.
Okay.
But the government actually dismissed the charges against one of the 12. I do apologize.
I think it was it 4?
Count indictment.
12?
It was 12. Okay, so there was more. I do apologize. I misspoke. There were more than 12, obviously, with your children and all that kind of stuff. But 12 of the surviving Branch Davidians were charged with 10 different counts. And then one of them, the government dropped charges to because of a plea bargain. And then the jury trial lasted 2 months. The jury acquitted 4 more of the Branch Davidians of all charges. The jury also acquitted all of the Branch Davidians on the murder-related charges, but convicted 5 of them on lesser charges.
Yeah, because they were originally convicted of murder of a federal officers, right?
Yeah. It was, they were being conspired to, aided, and abetted in the murder of federal officers. So basically saying that they had planned this out, it was first-degree murder, and, like they purposefully, not in, like, self-defense, not firing back or anything like that. They just, like, it would be the same if they just walked up to their car and shot them kind of thing.
Yeah.
Obviously, I don't really believe that that's how it went down.
No, but I do think that there was... How many of them officially... Like, what were the final ones? There were some that were prosecuted that did get charged, right? Wasn't there... was it 8 or something like that? 8 or 12? No, that's not right. Is it 8 or 12?
There's 9 that actually served prison time.
9 did? So... I'm trying to remember how many. Was it only 12 that were that were not even in trial? Because I thought a bunch of them got acquitted. Like where even the jury was like, "This seems like bull crap," or at least their lawyers got them off with virtually no time compared to the. I know that there were 8 that you're saying that served some serious time.
They did serve. They did serve some time. Like I said, the jury acquitted all of them on the murder-related charges. Convicted 5 of them on lesser charges, including aiding and abetting, the voluntary manslaughter of federal agents. 8 Branch Davidians were convicted on firearm charges. So 5 of them were convicted for voluntary manslaughter, and 8 with firearms. So that you could have the same, the voluntary manslaughter and firearm charges can be on the same person, which is why there's only 9.
I gotcha.
So I don't see specifically how long they actually served, and I did not look that up. Some of them, one of them gives out 40. An actual up to 40 years.
Up to 40, right? They could have gotten up to 40 years. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, they did serve up to. Some of them were sentenced up to 40 years. And later on, that did on several of them that did get cut way down. Through appeals and that kind of stuff. A lot of that had to do with the use of actual firearms and how they were charged with the firearm use. But the ones that were convicted was Kevin Whitecliffe, Jamie Castillo, Paul Fetta, Ranos Avram. He was a British national. Graham Craddock, who was an Australian national, Brad Branch, Livingston Fagan,
destroyed.
Yeah, it's probably.
Let's go with Fagan just to be safe here.
Let's go with Fagan, guys. I didn't say that other thing. He's British.
People that can't see us on video are gonna think I'm smoking a fat doobie over here. I'm like, keep coughing. I'm sorry, guys. That one really got me. I swallowed wrong.
We're not quite to the Joe Rogan experience yet.
Joe's like, hey man, just
Ruth Riddle, who was a Canadian national, and then Catherine Schroeder.
Catherine Schroeder, yeah.
You have to correct. Okay.
Sorry,
that's fair.
no.
That's
did
fair.
I pull a Micah? Did I pull a Micah in there? Oh, how does it feel?
So it looks like Kevin and Jamie were both convicted of voluntary manslaughter and using a firearm during a crime. Paul was convicted of a conspiracy to possess machine guns and aiding Branch Davidian leader David Koresh.
I think he did.
Yes.
Well, he didn't.
Aiding Branch Davidian leader David Koresh in possessing machine guns.
But that's touchy right there. Let's hit on that. Because here's another thing. When they bulldoze this mother trucker, and now I could be making a fool of myself here, so you know the information I don't, so I'm laying it out there. I could be a fool. But did the ATF ever find machine guns, or was it just based off the affidavit?
I don't believe so, and that's
Aguilera, who just said, well, they had an upper receiver and a lower receiver, and
they could have been making
if you did this, you could have made it a machine gun.
Yeah. I think later on with the appeals, I think the court agrees that they fail to kind of meet the definition of being in possession of.
You and I could go out with some PVC and some pressurized air, and we could make a machine gun with a sprinkler. I'm just saying.
With a sprinkler.
Well, it's if you set it up
The
so that
fudge
the
you talking
gearing is
about?
it's similar to the idea of a sprinkler. If you were setting it so that it would it wouldn't be super firing fast, but essentially we can make a
Firing
machine
bullets?
gun out of. I mean, what would you want out of there? You set the pressure high enough, and there's an open end. Yeah, you could. I mean, your projectile out of the potato guns are pretty.
Yeah, but you're talking. I mean, you're not talking about an actual. The definition
correct.
of a firearm needs an
Yes, but
explosion.
I guess what I'm just hitting on is what you and I hit on originally, that if you know what the French toast you're doing, as an educated person with firearms, you can more than likely take any firearm and make it a machine gun. Just about. If you know what you're doing and you have the right components. So for them to say, well, it's based on components, which, again, this was something we faced in, was that in 2019 with the
those are
Virginia
still
stuff?
laws that exist, as I covered.
Yeah, absolutely.
And,
Yeah.
just being in possession of a lower receiver and a short-barreled upper, if they are not currently attached to an appropriate legal upper or lower, having the two of them could be a reason to charge you with basically like what was it? I can't remember the exact name, but basically they would charge you with the intent, I think is what it was actually.
Yeah.
Intent to build a short
Do
barreled
you prefer
rifle.
being an upper or a lower?
I'm going to punch you. I think I really
You prefer the long barrel or the short barrel? I'm sorry. All right.
Moving right along.
Move along here. No jokes, folks. This is serious stuff.
So
Longer barrel gives you better accuracy. A little more weight, though. Harder inside the building. Okay. All right. Keep going here. I'm sorry. I'm being a douche.
So they got convicted on the voluntary manslaughter and using a firearm during crime, and that was Kevin, Jamie, Reynos, Brad, Livingston.
What was Livingston's last name again?
I'm not gonna. It's Fagan.
We never did say
We're
it's
gonna go
spelled
with Fagan.
Fagan, by the way.
Then there was also Ruth Riddle was convicted of using or carrying a weapon during a crime.
The Canadian, eh?
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
Gremmy, whatever the I don't even know how to
What are you trying to
Grayman
say?
Craddock, the Australian, he was convicted.
Oh.
I think it's a he. Was convicted of possessing a grenade and using or possessing a firearm during a crime. And then Catherine Schroeder. We're gonna go with that.
Yeah.
She was sentenced to 3 years after pleading guilty to a reduced charge of forcibly resisting arrest.
Interesting.
So that was
maybe
all
she
nine
jumped
of
out of
them.
the building and they tried to arrest her, and she was like, "I can go down without a fight." She was like kicking and punching.
It's possible that when
Pretty
they actually
extreme.
arrested her, she
3
didn't
years
have
they
a
tried to get
firearm
for
on her or something.
resisting arrest.
Well, it's not just resisting arrest;
Well, she said
forcibly
forcibly.
resisting.
Yeah. I mean, she judo chopped somebody.
She probably beat someone's rear end.
Well, I'm not telling you she's 6'4", 270. And she was breaking arms. So I don't know why I'm in such a joking mode. This is not funny stuff. I'm sorry. Continue
6
on,
of them
please.
appealed their sentences and their convictions. They challenged the constitutionality, the sufficiency of the evidence, the sentences imposed because they felt like they were given too long for what they were being convicted of, so on and so forth. Basically, the court basically said that they got some of the charges dropped on the firearms, but basically they didn't change anything. So they removed some of the charges related to firearms, but left their sentencing and all of that alone. So they didn't get any reduced time or anything like that. And then they ended up appealing it again, and it went to the district court. Pardon me.
Oh, jeez. Right on our podcast like that. Come on. Show some decency.
So The district court actually found the defendants had actively employed machine guns and resentenced 5 of them to substantial prison terms. So that got appealed, and then the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals affirmed the Branch Davidians pressed the issue before the United States Supreme Court. The Supreme Court revised, holding the term machine gun in a relevant statute created on an element of the offense to be determined by a jury. So basically, they decided that a jury was going to decide on it, and it ended up going to...
Go ahead. I don't know why I'm interrupting you. Go ahead.
Into 2000, so this is several years later.
Yeah.
The Supreme Court's instructions from a judge and the Supreme Court, they cut 25 years from the sentences of 5 of the convicted Branch Davidians and 5 years from another. So all of them were released as of July 2007. So none of them served. I think the actual court case started in 93, August of 93.
No, that's not right, because the incident went down in 95. That
yeah, no, it did.
You are right. August of
93.
I'm so sorry.
And so they were all out in July of 2007. So the most any one individual served was, 12... Or, no, I'm sorry. I'm bad at
14,
math. 13 years.
Yeah, roughly.
Almost 14 years. 13 years and 11 months.
And that kind of leads us back into the whole, where... I guess you could say civil suits by the Branch Davidians and their family members that even for the individuals who did die in the siege, it sounds like came forward and went after, I don't know if you want to say the ATF itself or who did they exactly go after pretty hard.
Well, they actually, the civil suits were on the United States government, numerous federal officials, the former governor of Texas, members of the Texas Army National Guard, and I'm sure there was a few more that I might be missing, but they were going after money, more or less.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to say that,
well, yeah, I mean, that
shouldn't be
probably was part of it.
At the same time,
you got the Waco stuff. I'm sorry, you have the Ruby Ridge incident when it finished up, and I don't remember off the top of my head what we never really closed out their case with the court cases and the legal fees, or what they got. But they did get some pretty massive settlements themselves. Nothing that will make up for what happened, but they did get some pretty substantial compensation for how the situation was handled. So I'm sure maybe you're gonna always have some of those people that latch on and maybe don't have the best of intentions. But this was an incident that was handled extremely poorly. I'm not trying. I've been so back and forth on this case every time. I'm not trying to defend David Koresh the man at all. I kind of see the viewpoints of both sides at times. I don't know that the ATF really truly actually was the FBI. I don't even know why the ATF again got thrown underneath the bus here, but the FBI was the one who was pushing some extremely aggressive and violent behavior, but I don't know that they really expected that many individuals to die that day. I don't remember the number off the top of my head right now either. I don't have that information in front of me, but the amount of people that died from smoke inhalation, or we went into it, if you listen to the second episode, we went into it, it wasn't even all peaceful like the little TV miniseries made out. I mean, we're talking about kids who had to be stabbed by their own parents, or we assume own parents or other family members or adults, killed because it was better to die that way than to suffocate and breathe in all this toxic fumes or burn to death. I don't know that the FBI's intention was to do that, but I would say there's a clear, and my unprofessional opinion, correlation between tear gas, and explosives. When you're using flashbangs, which we talked about, they were in there, they were deployed, and the amount of other cases we can look up, and even the ones after these, where you had instances where there's an enclosed area, an enclosed space, and you have tear gas, and it's not deadly or harmful or flammable until it's in an enclosed area. And then you have flashbangs. And then this seems to almost always lead to a fire. So, I mean, I think it's almost like willful ignorance at this point in the FBI's part. They were trying to secure their place and show their dominance. Whoa, I bumped my camera there. And this was the result, which was unfortunately loss of life on both sides. But I'm not going to let the government off on the part where they seriously overstep some bounds. I truly do not understand why the sniper aspect of it was not approached more. Granted, it was only the one time that David hung out that window or whatever else, but I don't understand.
It only takes one time.
It takes one shot. And what about all the times
But I mean,
up to this, where we said, go arrest him while he's on his runs? That would have been the best case scenario, in my opinion.
The best case scenario would have been to have arrested him, and we covered that. He multiple times had gone out to restaurants and going for jogs and that kind of stuff. It would have been best to have done it there.
But why didn't they, Micah? Why
but
didn't
I think the reason being, is I think we did already cover, was that they wanted to have a good light shed on them. I mean, really, that did not happen. It
they wanted
happened.
to show their power. I mean, that was it.
I don't know that it was so much necessary power. I think it became that. But I think initially it was they wanted to do it there so that they could, round up the whole compound at the same time, so that they could portray themselves as heroes of rescuing these children that were being beat by this evil, drug dealing, machine gun owning.
Which some of that evidence was all falsified. We know he wasn't dealing drugs, right? We went into
either way.
Yeah. Well, let's get into some of the other controversies, unless you have something you want to hit, as far as like.
No, you brought up the civil suit.
I did.
Other than that, I will stop at the civil suit. But basically, they tried suing the government, and so on and so forth. The judge that was overlooking it was the same judge, Walter Smith Jr. It was mentioned that he should have recused himself. For his relation, I guess, to some of the individuals that were being sued. But basically, it was determined that
really? So you had like a direct relationship. That's
I don't know what the relationship was. I don't have that.
Well,
basically, it was determined that the United States government could not be sued for their use of like the tear gas and that kind of stuff,
right?
Because it's not. I guess it's not something that like typically would be a problem. And then they also determined that the Branch Davidians had started the fire themselves, therefore they were not responsible for any of the damages.
Which that was played in. They played the audio files for the jury, and it seemed kind of split 50-50. And again, I'm basing this on an interview that David Thibodeau gave, which he even said, look up the audios yourself, which I guess we should have been more prepared. We could have had those audio files for you right now, if they're available to the public. But he said that basically the prosecutor presented the audio files and were like, see, here's what they're saying. You hear it, right? You can hear it, right? I'm just kidding, he wasn't that extreme, but basically was very persuasive in like, oh, you can hear what they said this and that. And even with him doing that, the jury still seemed split on like, I don't know, man. Like he was gargled, and because David Thibodeau said in that interview that I listened to, or Dave, I'm just gonna call him Theo, I keep saying his full name, David, said we knew they snuck in the ear, the listening devices, and we stuck them all in the same room inside of that big freezer, basically, or a bunch of them ended up passing away. They knew about them. And so even with that, the jury seemed pretty split on whether that, what the FBI was saying or ATF was saying, like, well, this is why we did this because of what they said here. And they still seem a bit split on whether that actually happened or not. We talked about some of the evidence of them saying, you read, I think it was episode 2, I believe it was 2, where we were talking about like, hey, start the fire. Is it time to start the fire? Do we have enough over there? And all that kind of stuff. Even those audio files.
this naming specific things in very specific ways. It was very strange.
It was
not
very convenient.
robotic.
I'll say it that.
I would say robotic.
Do you have that stuff to start fire over there?
Do you have
enough?
that? What didn't he like specifically like that
Listed what it
John
was?
Deere gas can over there? Serial number 196758. And then
It's not
that
a way you're gonna be talking if you're
Type
actually being
97
Yeah, these guys literally have
gasoline
tanks
over there.
busting down their walls. You're not gonna be like listing. You're just gonna be. You're gonna talk like a normal human being.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh. It was horrible what happened, but I have to say I do think that there was very questionable things in some of those.
One other big controversy I want to push out or talk about for just a second here, and this was the basically the biggest controversy because it's what kickstarted everything. It's what kickstarted the whole shootout. So one Roland, I believe his name is Ballistors, I think is his name, his last name, but Roland was one of the agents assigned to the ATF door team that was basically on the front door assault team. And he told Texas Rangers when they basically met up at the campsite before everything was all over, he basically told them and the Waco police that he thought the first shots came from the ATF dog team assigned to neutralize the Branch Davidian dogs. So that's what he told them there. And that's also what some of the Branch Davidians, of course, said. You know, everybody's going to talk and support their side. But that's what was said. But later at the trial, he insisted that the Branch Davidians had shot first. So you have a moment where you have multiple Texas Rangers and Waco police saying, well, wait a second. This guy said that they fired first. And now when he's sitting in the court of law, he's going, well, they fired first. So, I mean, to me, again, look, I'm not in law enforcement. I don't have that career. And in particular, being FBI, that's even a little bit more. That it's still, is it considered even law enforcement? What is it? It's the federal version. It's still law enforcement, but it's a higher tier. It's not your everyday, mall cop here. They should be held a higher standard, and if nothing else, they should have integrity and hold true to their word. The Branch Davidians obviously claimed that the ATF door team had opened fire at the door, and they returned fire in self-defense. So, long before the fire, the Davidians discussing the evidence contained in the doors during the siege in a phone conversation with the FBI Steve Schneider, one of Koresh's main confidants, which is the guy we were talking about that was from Wisconsin and all that, and him and his wife had a hard time having a baby. He told the FBI agents that the evidence from the front door will clearly show how many bullets and what happened. So he's basically saying that if you guys will just end things here, you can go and see how many of your bullets are coming through.
Smash the whole place down. Yeah. So 2 weeks, smash the whole place down.
Well, wait, we couldn't do that. Yeah, because we bulldozed it. Sorry, guys.
Yeah. Sorry, my bad.
Matter of fact, if you want to look that up, Micah, when did the actual siege take place versus the court cases? So just to see the correlation of how long before the court even started, the timeline of if you want to try and pull up some of that information while I'm reading some of this.
What did you say? When the last day?
Basically from the siege day to the court case, because we know that
April 19th was the day that it burned down, and it was August.
It was like 23rd or something.
August 3rd.
I knew it was some 3rd. So point being, so April, so June, July, August. So we're talking 2 months in between. At least, just not exactly, but 2 months. A little more than 2 months. You got all of June, July. I'm sorry. No, May, June, July. 3 months.
Count your months there.
Sorry.
Count your months.
So I always did. Dang it. Months are hard. Okay. So, God's sake. So 3 months you had between the actual burning of, the final assault and the court cases, and yet 2 weeks after the assault, everything's bulldozed. So even though you had this evidence that has a phone conversation where Steve's saying, hey, if you'll go look at the front door, you'll see that your guys opened fire and we returned fire in self-defense. I wonder about that too. What if none of the Branch Davidians had to return fire? What if they all just put their hands up? Would have they still gone through and just been popping people? We don't know. All right, it's all speculation at that point, because obviously we didn't get that far. But
I
anyways,
feel like that probably wouldn't have happened because I mean there were cameras out there.
but there wasn't.
You know,
Supposed to
obviously
be.
it was
There wasn't
only
suppo-
yeah
There
it
was
was
only
only
supposed
really
to be their
the
camera.
good cameras.
Yeah, we're gonna show
that's
you. And
true,
that guy ended up there
but
by accident.
I don't feel like there would have been. I don't. There might have been a few
Well,
casualties, but
I guess the
I
Houston
can't
attorney
imagine.
well, I don't even
That
DeGuerin,
dick.
who was sent inside Mount Carmel during the siege, testified at the trial that the protruding metal on the inside of the right-hand entry door made it clear that the bullet holes were made by incoming rounds. So Dick also testified that only the right-hand entry door had bullet holes, while the left-hand entry door was intact. The government presented the left-hand entry door at the trial, claiming that the right-hand entry door had been lost. So, again, not trying to throw you under the bus here, but come on. You're literally saying, here's the left door. No bullet holes, bro. We lost the right one because we bulldozed that? So that... Okay, now I'm getting pissed because then that means you mother truckers went out there and took the left door off the hinge, you bulldozed the place, and then you brought the left door to court to say, well, look at here, we never fired. Like, am I wrong? I mean, from what I'm reading here, who went inside the Mount Carmel, so it says he testified at the trial that protruding metal on the right inside of the handle of the door made it clear that the bullet holes were made by the incoming rounds. Dick also testified that only the right-hand entry door had bullet holes. So this is a guy who went in and actually was trying to negotiate when this was all going on. And I believe if you watch the miniseries, he's played by the one character that, I don't know the actor's name, but he used to be on CSI Miami. He was that guy. But he basically went in and said, listen, we've got these guys. If you come out right now...
Lieutenant Dan from...
No,
we're talking about?
No.
Oh, man, I wanted it to
guy.
be Lieutenant Dan.
It wasn't Lieutenant Dan.
Dang it.
My legs. No, the bald, like, kind of white guy, kind of taller. He was like their sheriff. But anyways, he basically said, if you come out right now, we've got these guys. So this is this guy right now, okay? While the left... So just listen to what I'm saying here and tell me if I'm wrong. While the left-hand entry door was intact, the government presented the left-hand entry door at the trial, claiming that the right-hand entry door had been lost. The left-hand door contained numerous bullet holes made by both outgoing and incoming rounds. Texas Trooper Sergeant David Keyes testified that he witnessed two men loading what could have been the missing door into a U-Haul. Oh, and he actually says that it was shortly after the siege had ended, but he did not see the object itself. And this is where we get Michael, his name is Michael Cadell, the lead attorney for the Branch Davidians. He explained in the wrongful death lawsuit, explained the fact that the left-hand door is in the condition condition it's in tells you that the right-hand door was not consumed by the fire. It was lost on purpose by somebody. Cadell, so, I mean, obviously, he's even calling him out in court. He's even calling him out, right? Because if I can sit here and I'm not a lawyer, I mean, this guy knows what he's doing. So, anyways, Cadell offered no evidence to support his allegations, which has never been provided. However, fire investigators stated that it was extremely unlikely that the steel door could have suffered damage in the fire much greater than that of the steel door on the left, and both doors would have been found together. The right door remains missing, and the entire site was under close supervision by law enforcement officials until the debris, including both doors, had been removed. So, again, I'm not trying to throw you under the bus here, but let's call a spade a spade. Does it not seem you're tweaking some of your evidence here?
Seems a lot like that.
I mean,
or at least
on.
trying to omit key pieces of evidence.
Right.
Although I do have to say I don't know what the relevance of bullet holes in a door.
So I'm going to tell you
be.
why it's relevant. The main reason why a lot of these people ended up getting prosecuted was, and why a lot of this occurred anyways, one of the big controversies was who fired first. Again, these guys didn't come up and try to serve a warrant. They never once did. They made a siege. They tried to siege these guys on a full-on assault. And so these guys, not knowing, because if we I'm trying to remember. No, I do think they were wearing ATF. They did have marked who they were. They were in civilian vehicles. But initially, the vehicles pulling up were just civilian vehicles. But David did know they were coming. He knew it was the government. He knew who it was. It wasn't a surprise. They did know about that. But what it does show is that more than likely when we get into the story and the debate of, well, who fired first? Well, this from right here tells me that the ATF clearly knew that they messed up and they were firing first. More than likely they were taking out the dog team and they heard probably one or two Branch Davidians fire back, or they just simply opened fire. Because what it's saying is if David came out the right door, right, I'm going to go talk him down because I am, he's going to go talk him down. And then, remember, and it's portrayed pretty well in the miniseries where he goes out. He basically is like, hey, we got women and children in here. And then, great sound effects. I'm going into that business. Anyways, they open fire. They hit him. They strike I can't remember the gentleman's name. Mark, maybe. I can't remember his name, but he was the father-in-law to David, basically. Gets killed. The father of the post office guy who came and warned him. So what it shows is that the ATF, in my opinion, from this little bit of evidence I have in front of me, I'm like 90% sure the ATF definitely opened fire first. Right? Doesn't make it right, that the Branch Davidians decided to open fire back, but at the same time they also feel that I don't know, man. This is the part that sucks. There's part of me that's like, well, if you just put your guns down, nothing will happen. But it's like, the French, you can't just go on people's property and just start shooting crap up. That's not okay.
If I'm behind anything, it's you don't willy-nilly give your firearms over to the government.
Right. So, to me, those are the two big key points, is the store missing, which I actually had not known about. And I think that's a huge piece to a lot of this. And then the being bulldozed in 2 weeks. I think those are two huge things. Also, we could briefly, I guess, hit on the helicopters, which had been obtained from the Alabama and Texas National Guard on false pretext that there was a drug laboratory in Mount Carmel, as we explained in episode 2. That was all from, what was that guy's name? George something? George Soros. I'm just kidding. I don't remember what that mother trucker's name was, but it was George. He was the guy that was running the place before them who was dealing meth. There, in fact, was no drug-related charges on the arrest warrant served on the morning of February 28th, 1993. So the very morning that they went and had the assault, they didn't even have drug charges on the warrant. Yet here we have 2 helicopters obtained because of the War on Drug Act. Okay, another controversy. The official version of these events that has always stated that the helicopters were merely used as a diversion. That the crew only had a 9mm sidearms. It had no shot, and that no shots were fired from them. However, we have that incident where we talked about where the the day of the siege, where how long did the camera cut out? I don't know off the top of my head, but it was like 45 minutes. The one camera lost its feed from the helicopter. The dude is probably up there with a freaking rifle, opening fire. We don't know. I'm just spitballing here because obviously we don't know this, so I guess it's not fair to say that. But in the weeks preceding the raid, Rick Ross, first of all, his name is Rick Ross. Come on, do you not know the Rick Ross, Micah?
I don't.
Never gonna give you up. Never gonna give you. You don't know that? Getting Rick rolled? Wait, is that Rick rolled? Dang it! Am I making a fool of myself right now? Is it? I don't know. It's Rick something. It's either Rick Ross or Rick Rolled. But you know what I'm talking about, where you think you're clicking on something else and you get Rick, and he's like, never gonna give you up. Okay, you know what? Back to what we're talking about.
No, I haven't.
A self-described cult expert and deprogrammer affiliated with the Cult Awareness Network appeared on major networks such as the NBC, CBS in regard to Koresh. Ross later described his role in advising authorities about the Davidians and Koresh. This is where he comes in saying, listen, I went and talked to these guys about the whole idea of what a cult is and understanding their thought and belief system, but mainly their thought, the way that they're thinking and their ideology. So he advised authorities about the Davidians and Koresh and what actions should be taken to end the siege. He was quoted as saying that he was consulted by the ATF and he contacted the FBI on March 4th, 1993, requesting that he be interviewed regarding his knowledge of cults in general and the Branch Davidians in particular. The FBI reports that he did not rely on Ross for advice whatsoever during the standoff, but that he did interview and received input from him. Ross also telephoned the FBI March 27th and March 28th, offering advice about negotiation strategy. So this sounds like this guy was just really trying to reach out and help and diffuse the situation, right? I mean, maybe he was overstepping his bounds a little bit, but he's probably understanding that, listen, like you and I are saying from the outside point of view now, looking back, going, listen, the things you're doing are only reinforcing the way that they believe, right? Suggesting that the FBI attempt to embrace Koresh by informing other members of the compound about Koresh's faults and failures in life in order to convince them that Koresh was not the prophet they had been led to believe.
I mean, he also called himself the sinful Messiah.
I am. Listen. Yeah, sure. I sleep with like 17 women, but I'm the sinful
Most of
Messiah.
which are under 17.
God's sake. The ATF also contacted Ross on January 1993 for information about Koresh. Several writers have documented the Cult Awareness Network's role in relation to the government's decision-making concerning Waco. They give another person's name here. Studies have shown self. Blah 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 blah. So, anyways, he basically said Koresh was frequently criticized as either a religious lunatic who doomed his followers to mass suicide, or a con man who manipulated religion for his own bizarre personal advantage. According to the religious scholars Philip Arnold and James Tabor, who made an effort to help resolve the conflict, the crisis need not have been ended tragically if only the FBI had been more open to religious studies and better able to distinguish between the dubious ideas of Ross and scholarly expertise. And I do think that's fair. I get that that's not, they maybe feel like somebody's coming on their turf and like trying to tell them how to do things, but that is fair. Had they approached that a little differently, maybe. We don't know. We don't know for sure. I kind of feel like David was one of those guys who just would have kept things going, but I do feel that they could have gotten a lot more people out. What would have been the worst that would have happened? You starve them to death? Well, I mean, I guess we talk about how much that they had, but if you go off the show and some other people's notes, they were starting to get low on food. They had a ton of ammunition and more than enough firepower, but they were starting to run a little low on food. But yeah, I mean, we could keep reading.
Well, that and water. I mean, as we discussed, the water reservoirs had been damaged and we're leaking water. So
purposely.
At a certain point,
you can't go very long
I don't know that they were
water.
purposely, but they got damaged.
Yeah.
And they were, I believe it said that they were running off of like rainwater and that kind of stuff. So, and then they were eating MREs, which are
and you're eating these in the 90s, which means you're probably eating MREs from like the 70s.
Garbage. I tried one. It's not a pleasant thing.
Hey, the pasta ones are pretty good. Okay, don't you?
Well, maybe the new MREs are all right.
Yeah, the
but
new stuff's
the
actually really
old,
good.
Like it's literally powder.
Yeah, you dump that in, you shake it up. Formula.
It's pretty freaking gross. So
the only thing I could think of
rough.
maybe hitting on would be the. There's two things. If you'd like to catch up with me a little bit here, if you kind of check down where it says the FBI had planted surveillance devices in the walls of the building, which captured a number of conversations the government claims are evidence in the Davidians started the fire. And this is where we were talking about, so just quickly hitting on it. The recordings were imperfect and many times difficult to understand. And the two transcripts that were made had differences at many points, meaning transcript, in case you're not sure of that, what that means is an audio version you listen to and you write it into a paper format or basically a version you could read. So the two people who transcribed this from audio version to a written version both had differences in what was stated at key moments. That should be another question right there. I just wanted to kind of hit that out there. The only thing I could think of was the one last big note was that critics have suggested that during the final raid, the CS gas was injected into the building by armored vehicles in an unsafe manner. And if you watch the video, you're not wrong, because those mother truckers were not playing around in those tanks. They straight up ran that building, bro. Anyways, which could have started a fire, while two of the 3 fires were started well inside the building. Now, okay, I just have to ask this question too. Again, not an expert, but what arson profession did they bring in the 2 weeks before they freaking destroyed this place to know? I'm just wondering. Was it them that just said this, or did you bring in an arson expert to say that 2 of the 3 fires were started well inside the building, away from where the CS gas was pumped in? Survivor David Thibodeau claimed in 1999 interview with, if you want to look it up, it's called The Reason, that damage to the building allowed the gas to spread, stating that they had started to break the walls, break the windows down, spread the CS gas out. Further controversy involves the use of gas grenades. Now, again, this is where you have a spark, right, that could ignite, causing a fire. Attorney General Reno had specifically directed that no pyrotechnic devices be used in the assault between 1993 and 1999. The FBI spokesman denied, even under oath, the use of any sort of pyrotechnic devices during the assault. However, ladies and gentlemen, pyrotechnic flight right CS gas grenades had been found in the rubble immediately following the fire. So someone's lying. Either they just happen to have pyrotechnic grenades, or you used them. In 1999, FBI spokesmen were forced to admit that they had used the grenades. However, they claimed that these devices, which dispense CS gas through an internal burning process, had been used during an early morning attempt to penetrate a covered, water-filled construction pit 4 yards away and were not fired into the building. Last note would be, according to the FBI, pyrotechnic devices was missing. According to the FBI, claims that the fires started approximately 3 hours after the grenades had been fired. When the FBI's documents were turned over to Congress for an investigation in 1994, the page listing the use of the pyrotechnic devices, guess what, ladies and gentlemen? It went missing. I can't. Okay, now, listen, you mother truckers. Like, come on, you had a door that went missing, you had paperwork that went missing, the audio you based all your actions off of got transcribed into 2 different outcomes based on the people who listened to it? Come on. So 1 second here, was missing. The failure for 6 years to 6 years. The failure for 6 years to disclose the use of pyrotechnics dispute her specific directive led Reno to demand an investigation. A senior FBI official told Newsweek that a senior FBI official told Newsweek that as many as 100 FBI agents had known about the use of pyrotechnics, but no one spoke up until 1999. On May 12th, less than a month after the incident, Texas State authorized, and they say less than a month, 2 weeks, ladies and gentlemen, after the incident, Texas State authorities bulldozed the site, rendering further gathering of forensic evidence impossible. Well, if we had the time to go into that, sure, I'm sure we would have found things on the Branch Davidian side. But I'm starting to really wonder if even this amount of evidence, in my opinion, painting the FBI in a pretty piss poor picture right now, how much more would have been found? That's really what I've got, Mike. I don't know if there's anything else you want to share, but we can do some closing thoughts really quick here. But is there any other information that you want to share? Those are the main points I wanted to make that I feel are strongly questionable, bare minimum. Any other evidence, or you just want to give some closing thoughts here?
No, I'm fine with just kind of closing it up because,
All right.
to be honest, I'm kind of tired. I didn't get didn't get enough sleep last night.
Heck yeah. All right. So what are you feeling based on what I just talked about? Based on what we just talked about there. What do we got?
I mean, I think it's possible
Pull you
that
back up on the big screen. Look at that sexy redheaded bearded man. Ugh.
I think it's possible.
Give me a broner.
Oh Jesus!
It's been a while. It's been a while since we've been an old broner reference right there.
I think it's possible that there were tiny bits that might look a little odd, so they decided to just kind of cover them up, and that there wasn't really that much. I'm probably gonna misuse this word because, to be honest,
Go for it. It's a podcast.
I was gonna say malfeasance.
What?
But I'm not.
Feces.
I shouldn't use word. I said malfeasance.
Male
I'm
feces.
gonna punch you. So I don't. Maybe there was just a lot of things that could look real bad, but not necessarily be bad.
Well,
and they were just trying to lighten what was going to come to light. And by doing that made it look way worse.
I think they're wondering if
it's possible.
Let's go
Dude,
context.
you want me to give these thoughts
you're
or
right.
not?
Sorry,
mother trucker.
I'm thinking like you and I are in the same room, and I forget we're doing a show. People got to be able to hear what you're saying.
Jeez.
Sorry. Please, pontificate.
So, I think it's possible that there wasn't as much wrong with this as it may appear, and that it just looks really bad. But I also think that it looks really bad because it was really bad.
Yes,
So,
I mean that's part of it. Part of the reason why it looks bad is because maybe it was not good.
Yeah, it could have really been. Could have really been real bad. I don't know that I really. I think we didn't really put much into it, and I don't put much behind the whole they were executing people as they were leaving the fire.
Yeah, that's
that
something
kind of
we
stuff.
get in
I
on.
think that's a bit far.
We didn't even get into that, but David talked about that.
We mentioned it at the end of the last episode.
We did. Yeah.
I don't know that I necessarily believe that. I think that might be a bit far. That might be a bit of a far stretch too. I understand certain things. I think throwing CS gas in there into a confined space and knowing that there's a chance that it could ignite, I think could be negligent. Here's the one thing that I would say, though. If you watch the video of the fire starting, they do start pretty close to each other. The chances of a gas being spread through. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it had been several hours. I'm sure it had pretty much saturated every bit of that building, and it just happened to all ignite at the same time.
I was going to say the Branch Davidians did have gas masks, so they were able to.
That's true, but what I'm
able to handle the gas.
I guess what I'm getting at is the fires did start pretty close to each other, far as time. So, unless all the CS gas just built up to a point where it ignited all pretty much at the same time, I think it is possible that they started the fire themselves. I do think there's plenty to go off of being negligent on the government's behalf, not arresting him outside of the compound, trying to make a spectacle out of it was a piss poor choice.
It was.
And I think ultimately it led to this entire incident happening. And you could have avoided everything by simply arresting him when he was out and about rather than at the compound. So I do think ultimately that does put this whole instance on the government's shoulders, or at least certainly. I mean, ATF and the FBI are government, so we'll just use government. I do think ultimately it is their fault, but I think that there's a chance that they are not as guilty as
Well,
some of this may portray them.
well, I mean, this.
But
is
then
just
again, it very well could be that they are actually, in fact, as guilty as they look.
Well, I think too we have to. This goes two ways. This is a two-edged sword, I would say. When we deal with the idea of the militarization of law enforcement, specifically leading up to this point, and even going forward, it's weird. I walk a fine line with it where I absolutely believe and support law enforcement. I know that it's an essential part of society that we need, but I think that they have to be individuals of incredible integrity, and they may not be dealing with individuals of incredible integrity, and I understand that maybe you're going to need those rough riders, as it were, but when you're in the FBI, it's the same thing. You're dealing with even a new class specification of people and criminals. But was this guy really the level of criminal that required this amount of action? I don't know. I think that, first of all, the information, the affidavit that David Aguilera put together already put David in a light that was inappropriate, was already misleading agents, just like what happened with Ruby Ridge, where the agents had, what was it that specifically happened with them? They had classified them as terrorists, I believe it was, or something similar to that. Remember that? Where the letter that they had made a profile, the FBI had already made a profile for them prior to them ever even putting out a arrest warrant or any of that for him. Because something about them writing letters. Remember that they supposedly wrote letters to like the Pope, the president.
Writing letters.
Yeah. So anyways, getting back to this, you are basing it off of what David Aguilera brought up originally, which the ATF, where he said, needed a freaking win because they got thrown under the bus by the FBI at Ruby Ridge, which was messed up. But the FBI made most of the aggressive attacks and actions outside of the first initial conflict. Leading into this, we have the initial incident, which, again, you disregarded. Micah, forgive me. What was the name, and I don't know if you'll know it or not, the agent that was on the inside for them? Was his name David as well? I feel like I should know this. This is going to bug me now. Anyways, there was an agent that they had doing reconnaissance for them, and it actually had been going in and out of the compound freely, it sounds like. David knew who he was, knew he was an agent, even though he didn't know he was an agent. But anyways, Miguel something, maybe that's wrong. Michael will find it in a second for us here. But he basically ends up telling his lead that, hey, first of all, if you're going to do a raid, the whole point of the raid was the element of surprise. Catch the enemy with their pants down, as it were, right? You disregarded that. They knew that you were coming. You disregarded me, and then you threw me under the bus, saying that I had basically... He ended up filing... what did he file against them? What do they refer the term as? Like, where it's detrimental to their name or whatever. He sued the FBI. Was it FBI or ATF? One of the two.
Defamatory.
That's it.
It's Rodriguez.
Robert Rodriguez. Right. Who is telling them, hey, these guys know you're coming. David even tells them, hey, go tell them we're good. And David himself said he didn't think there was anything illegal happening. Messed up things happening? Yes. Qualifications for the ATF to be there? No. Outside of the firearms, which, in my opinion, a stretch at best. You were grasping. You falsified the information for the drug charges to get your helicopters and other events there. And also, you didn't even have drugs on the arrest warrant that was going to be served to people. So what does that mean? Does that mean that you just had it in the affidavit, but it wasn't you couldn't actually put it on paper because it couldn't stick because, that's not actually happening? Because you probably relied on those flyovers that showed the infrared. It's showing that, there's a meth lab down there. You probably knew that they were a couple years old. Oh, and you disregarded local law enforcement. We didn't even read in the last couple episodes. We didn't even read what the sheriff had to say about them. He had nothing good to say about these guys. Not the Branch Davidians. Talking about how the ATF and the FBI handled it. Nothing good to say about them, because he was completely overrode. They went over top of his head, and as we played in the last episode, the audio file, where you can tell how overwhelmed he is listening to everything that was going down. But had they talked to him, they would have found out that David said, "Hey, here is this evidence," and he brought in law enforcement to take it out and handle it. So that's strike one for ATF. Actually, it's more like strike two, because you were going on an element of surprise, you completely disregarded that, and then you falsified the information on the drug act. You also you could say 3 strikes, because you got the helicopters and the militarization involved because of the war on drugs. So that's 2 to 3 strikes right there. And then you lead into the amount of, then it gets into the FBI. Then it gets into them and their tactics and how they disregarded those who were volunteering to try and give you reason on, hey, here how this is how these people operate. This is their ideology. And everything you're doing is pushing them away. And then we talked about the difference between the tactical team and the negotiation team. How it was like freaking middle school or high school, they're writing stuff on the bathroom doors to each other, calling the negotiators pussies. You have the tactical team mooning the Branch Davidians, riding the tanks over their vehicles, over the graves of those that have been buried and are dead from this. Again, I'm not trying to throw all of law enforcement or the FBI into the bus here. What I'm saying is, we have to learn from our history. We cannot forget about it. We have to learn from it. They made a mistake here. They did. The Branch Davidians, David Koresh in particular, no saying at all in my book. I don't 100%, I don't really feel sorry for what happened to David Koresh. What I feel sorry for are the amount of individuals, especially the children, that died because of this. And that is a result of parents choosing to follow a man versus whatever logical decisions they should have been making. But I will say, when you get into the evidence here, I think there's enough, in my opinion, between the missing door, the fact that you lied under oath, you had the missing paperwork, and then you had the other FBI guy saying over 100 FBI agents had known about the use of pyrotechnics, but no one spoke of them until 1989, well after the court cases are closed. What's going on here? Why is it that the audio that you based all your actions on are getting 2 different transcripts from people? What I'm trying to say is, yeah, did the FBI do what they thought was right in the moment? Maybe. I think it's circumstantial at best. I think the actions of the FBI at this point, in my opinion, are just as heinous, or if not worse, than the actions that David Koresh had done. That's just my opinion. I think David Koresh, probably a pedo, in my opinion. We've talked about that. Some of the stuff he was doing.
I don't think probably. I think
he was a pedophile.
Flat out.
It seems like it.
He was.
Yeah. The guy was a piece of crap. Listen, I'm not. Just to be very, very clear, I am not defending David Koresh. What I am saying is, we have to be ever, ever vigilant of the actions upon one, because the actions upon one can be the actions upon you if we allow it. And the way that they handled the situation was not okay, in my opinion. Again, easy to say from sitting in a chair 30-something years removed from the 20-something years removed, getting close to 30 years removed from this situation. I understand that. But we cannot sit there and give the FBI a free pass on this one. And because of these actions, and because of the negligence on their parts and the arrogance, we lead into many other deaths and loss of innocent life from a dick, a scum of the earth douchebag named Timothy McVeigh, and his ideology and his weird white supremacy movements and neo-Nazi stance. If we get into that and we cover all that, the amount of life loss over that, because of the actions back here, we're going to get it. If we cover that, Mike, if we do choose to cover that, so much of how people were mad about this, and rightfully so, just like you and I are in this moment, or at least myself. But his actions are not justified either. But because of how this was handled, and the clear evidence that the FBI was hiding evidence, in my opinion. But I don't know if it's just my opinion. It seems to be the actual evidence that's presented. We led to many other people losing their lives. And that's the Oklahoma bombing, if we go into all that. Mike, I think that's about all I have to say about this particular thing. I don't know if you have anything else you want to add. Once again, to make it clear, I support law enforcement. I believe they're an essential, key part of society. But we have got to call a spade, and we've got to be held accountable where we can be held accountable. And this wasn't exactly, you and I have talked about the instance when an officer shows up to a scene and they've got 2.4 seconds to decide and ascertain what exactly is happening before their life's in danger. Entirely different than this situation. How long did this one go on? What was the date? How many days?
I think it was just like
50-something days?
52, 59 days.
Yeah,
like
this
that.
wasn't some situation where you just had to roll up and make a life and death
51
decision
days.
in
No,
a
it was
second?
total of 52 days.
Yeah. That's all I got. I'm going to stop ranting and raving. I've done enough of that, and I've taken enough of your time here at the end. I don't know if there's anything you want to close out, Micah. Give any closing thoughts?
No, I would just add that I'm not necessarily... Again, I'm kind of with William. I'm firm believer in law enforcement. I don't believe that you should demonize them all. But I would, and I'm not making this political, but I would add...
I'm going to make it political.
With certain things, say, like... what was his freaking face? Strzok.
Well, it's not a
Peter Strzok. Completely fabricating crap. He's part of the FBI, completely fabricating crap with the whole when the Trump-Russia collusion trials were going on.
Oh, this is moving to more a
So,
modern era. Okay.
yeah. So I would say it's definitely it's not beyond the realm of possibilities that the individuals, at very least, individuals inside of agencies. Maybe even possibly the agencies themselves,
right?
The governments themselves will lie to you. It's not at all beyond the realm of possibilities.
I think in this situation we dealt with a really crappy human being, and then maybe some crappy human beings on the FBI side. So David Koresh being the first one, the FBI being the other ones. That led to some really crappy results. That led into even some more god-awful crappy results because of these actions on both parties. But again, I don't think we can give... This is my closing thought, last thought. I cannot stand behind the actions that the FBI particularly took after the incident was over, because you didn't allow a fair trial to take place. You didn't allow all the evidence to be presented. In my opinion, you had clear evidence of them in what's the term when you interfere with an ongoing active investigation. That is my personal opinion. I don't give them a pass on that, and that's where I will hold them accountable and continue to remind others when you say, well, they'd never do that, to say, well, hey, look at Ruby Ridge. That's one man. Look at Waco. That's an organization trying to live off the grid kind of deal. Maybe not some great things going on there. But Ruby Ridge, that one in particular pisses me off. But this as a whole pisses me off. I think when we don't hold them accountable, terrible, terrible things can happen. Unconstitutional things can happen. And it's a very gray area when it comes to that whole idea of law enforcement serving a warrant on someone's private property and that person not being aware that maybe they have a warrant out for their arrest. That is a gray area that I do think there is some speculation for debate on who's in the right. Because if it's late at night and you don't know, and an officer opens your door and you blow that officer back out the door, are you completely in the wrong? In that moment, you didn't know. If that officer kicks open your front door and you go for a gun and he shoots you, he's still kind of in the right. Because, well, he has a warrant for your arrest and you reached for a weapon. So now we're in this situation where it's like, well, basically just whoever can kill the other guy first is going to end up being in the right. Unless you're the citizen, you're still probably going to get screwed.
I was going to say, if you shoot an officer that comes bust you, I don't care what time of day it is, they're going
But
to hold you accountable.
how do you
for
ascertain that, Micah? I do know what you're saying. I'm not trying to paint a picture here to hate on law enforcement, but I'm saying you
No, I
living in your own
absolutely
home,
agree with you.
How do you know? You're sleeping in your bedroom and somebody kicks open your front door. Do you stop to see if it's law enforcement? Now, again, they should. This is importance of procedure, and they should, from my understanding, announce who and what they are and why they're there, right? But a lot of times, if you watch those videos, they kick open the front door, they say who they are, or they'll announce it from the outside. Once they kick open the door, they're not continually announcing as they're walking to the house, I'm Officer so-and-so. I'm here for your warrant, for your arrest. They're just walking through, firearm drawn. It's a gray area. It's not good. It's not a perfect solution. We don't live in a perfect world. But I do think there's an area there but in this situation where the way that this went down, if David did indeed exit the building at one point to say, we've got women and children here, it sounds terrible, but they could have even opened up on just David, which they did. He was struck twice, but they could have just freaking mowed him down. This still bothers me. That just feels like in some ways there were some guys who wanted to play Army and did.
Especially
again,
when you talk about 900 individuals camping outside.
900? Are you freaking kidding me? Okay, I'm done anyways. I'm going to stop, because otherwise I'm going to keep going. Anything you want to add, Micah, or I'll close this out here?
No, I think we're good.
Final thought?
Appreciate you all listening.
Thank you. Sorry I took 3 parts to close this out.
We didn't get that shout out to...
we'll do that we'll do that in the beginning. We'll do that in the intro.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so as always, guys, stay curious and keep it weird.